Welcome to Your Life Reset, a Virta Health podcast series. I'm your host, Teresa Link, and in this series, we'll hear from people on their Virta journey, the wins, failures, moments of adversity, and moments of joy they're experiencing along the way. So sit back, relax, and listen as we unwrap the truly human experience of Virta.
Hey there, listeners. I'm Teresa Link, and this is Your Life Reset. Today's guest, Esther Carlson, is a writer, speaker, and mom who brings honesty and heart about conversations around body image, parenting, and self-worth. In this episode, she shares her personal journey from self-monitoring to self-honoring, what body positivity really means, and how we can help our kids, especially daughters, build a healthier relationship with their bodies. So whether you're a parent, a health professional, or you're just looking to feel more at home in your own skin, this one's full of insight and encouragement. Let's get into it. Well, thanks for joining us today, Esther.
Thanks for having me.
So, Esther, we recently had a experience on a plane where we were sitting next to each other, and this was actually the reason why I wanted to invite you onto the podcast today, was because we had this incredible conversation, all about the way you talk to your children about body image and how we should just talk about it in general, and sometimes just not talk about it too. So I really wanted to bring you on to explore that topic a lot more because it's so important. So first I want to hear from you. How do you define body positivity? Let me say that again. How would you define body positivity, and how has your relationship with your body changed over time?
I'm not sure I would have always defined it as body positivity. I think it was something that I figured out, like, hey, what's coming up for me? And has this been discovered before? Like, is anyone else thinking about it this way? And it turns out that the definition is more of a movement, and it challenges basically the beauty standards that I think we all just kind of buy into, but it pushes back and invites all people, regardless of gender, of race, of size, of ability, of a background. It invites them into both seeing and speaking about their bodies in a different way.
All right. So that sounds quite the movement, right? It also sounds like a lot of words that maybe we need to kind of unpack a little bit. What does this mean for us in our daily lives? What does this mean for how we actually talk about it, right? So I'm curious to hear, you've mentioned before that you've shifted from monitoring to honoring. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think when we think about the roots of things and what caused certain things to come up, I think for most, they're like, okay, body positivity. Okay. Yeah, I can remember, high school being a really critical time, or different seasons in their life pop up over like, yeah, I remember being kind of more critical, more aware, more maybe even judgmental about where my body was at, how I was feeling in it, what it was looking like, and what it meant. And yeah, high school pops, a few events pop into mind, those times on the bleachers between games, or before after school, or around, seasons like prom. Yeah, those pop into mind. But when I think about really more of the roots, I think it starts so much earlier than that, which is daunting as an adult and kind of scary as a parent, because we're already in it so quickly. But I can remember like pulling open, before there were sliding doors on minivans that opened with buttons. I can remember like pulling open the minivan door and wanting to be the first one in my grandparents' house so that I wasn't compared to my sister who's 2 years older and built just entirely differently than me. And no harm was intended. But if you made it to the porch, you might have made it past some of the, you're looking XYZ today, or I can see you're getting stronger. You're so much bigger than the last time that I saw you.
Yeah.
Never ill-intended, but there and noticeable, and compare and contrast to even siblings.
Yeah. It's just so easy to say something that we may not realize could be kind of creating this narrative for kids, and trying to break that cycle, I think has to be really intentional. Um, I I learned, I was so inspired by our conversation on this plane that I've always tried to talk with, let's say, my 5-year-old daughter about, if she makes a comment about someone, who's maybe bigger or who's having a tough time, uh, getting around and they need to be in a scooter, let's say in the grocery store. Trying to say things like, "Isn't it amazing how all of our bodies are shaped differently? And the most important thing is celebrating what our bodies can do." She might say, "That lady has big legs." I say, "Isn't it amazing how those legs really power the things that she does every day? I bet she can jump super high." And trying to really just make it not about the body, right? So I learned so much about that from you. But again, it has to be purposeful. We have to get out of this autopilot, right? It's so easy to say things like, "Oh, you're so much bigger than the last time," or I'll often say, "Oh gosh, AD, you're getting so heavy," and then I correct myself. "Your legs are growing. You're growing just like you should, but it's because you're growing. It's harder for me to be able to pick you up like I used to." So yeah, not to go get too long-winded here. How did some of those comments make you feel when you were, younger?
I don't know if they made me feel differently when I was younger, and I don't know if I even noticed that it was happening, to tell you the truth. I think it was subtle. It was constant, but it was subtle, and it felt objective. It felt even, like, loving that they were noticing something, but I think I internalized that, and I started seeing myself with a hypercritical eye. And honestly, as that awareness grew, I thought it was kind of like a badge of honor that I could recognize that there was, a perceived weakness and work on it, and think about it as awareness and capacity and capability, but rather, what was meant to be something to live up to became kind of a heavy weight.
That's really interesting that you say something that you can work on within your body. And of course, we have all things that we can work on, right? But when
Sure.
we're talking about kind of the physical qualities of our body, it can get pretty sticky pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, I think it took time for me to recognize that those were things. They were just objective things, neutrally, and whatnot. But they were things that I was allowing or were creating a pressure that kind of felt like they contributed towards my worth. So, um, let's say someone wants to become healthier by going to the gym. That's great. That's a great motivation. It's a difference of when you wake up and say, "I'm gonna go to the gym because I hate my body, and I'm gonna go to the gym because I love my body, and I wanna nurture my body, and I wanna become stronger so I can lift up my kids, so that I can serve at my, local whatnot." And just different areas where we see our bodies working for something in a good way versus trying to contribute to our worth.
What a powerful thing to say, contribute to our worth and how it's possible that, and really, I'd say kind of devastating that so many of us, especially little girls, right? It's not just little girls or older girls or women, it's men,
Yep.
it's little boys, it's adolescent boys. Every spectrum of gender is let me start that again. Regardless of how you identify, this impacts all of us. And it doesn't take much, does it? I remember I remember being in, 3rd, 4th grade and I commented on one of my schoolmates hats that he was wearing. And I was like, "Nice hat." And he's like, "Yeah, well, you're fat."
Ugh,
And I'm
jeez.
like, that just felt like
Ugh.
way meaner than what I said. And yeah, I mean, I was definitely growing into my body. I was definitely chubbier than a lot of the other, girls. I definitely always wished that I could, that I was skinny like them. And I think is sad how it did translate into adulthood. And as you mentioned, that a project that I can work on. I'm not gonna lie, I still really struggle with this. So I, really look people like you, inspiring me to kind of think about things a different way is, we need much more of that. And I hope that, my goal is to give my daughter a different relationship with her body
Mhm.
than I feel like I even have to this day that I feel like I'm working on. So, um, let's kind of go back a little bit.
Mm.
Was there a turning point for you, like a moment in your life that kind of really shifted the way that you see yourself and the way that you see others?
Yes. There were times that I recognized, wow, that thing that would have eaten at me, and now it doesn't. But I think for me, it was more of like a slow unlearning, and then figuring out what was coming up for me when those things were happening so I could actually work through it instead of it being kind of this thing that was coming out in weird, odd directions. And honestly, things that I thought I had worked through and then had kids and realized I hadn't worked through them. But really for me, it looked like modeling something better. And I think as parents, we're always trying to give our kids the better version of what we had, right? Whatever it might be, we're going to try to build upon the good things, minimize the bad things, and really defining what does better look like. So I started thinking about, the women who modeled something better for me, and that yes, strong would be, finishing a marathon, which my mom did multiple times. But strong could also be like when you go into the hospital room after someone's birthed a child and they're not our standard definition of beauty, but that's like the most beautiful time ever when we can say, wow, you gave life to the world. Or whether it even, if it's tied to this scale, if it's something, like effortless and I'm going to start over. If it, wasn't effortless and polished, if it was just kinda gritty to I'm gonna show up again and again and again. Like, I think about the coaches in my life that showed up every single day to practices after school, like, that's beautiful, that's strong, that's being a strong woman in the world. Or the people who said, "I know that these disciplines help me," whether that be the discipline of meal prep or the discipline of, "I said I was gonna go to bed, so I'm not gonna scroll." Or the discipline of I said I'm gonna do this and it didn't work out in the way that I thought it would to get to the gym. So I'm gonna go on a walk with my kids or I'm gonna make it happen in a different way. And all these standards of strength and beauty started kind of shifting my definition and being more obtainable than these shifting standards I was seeing in culture that were more like, hey, curves are in, curves are out. Hey, dark skin is, oh, I don't want to say that. Tan skin is in. Or no, it's about that like natural pale or all these shifting, skincare routines and makeup routines and all these things. They were always moving, they were always shifting. And I realized that I couldn't ever get grounded in that. I would have to look to um, really a different way of thinking about my body and how I wanted to function in the world. And then I would have to figure out how to translate that to my kids, which is something I'm always learning and growing and messing up in front of them and apologizing to them and doing it again and again, and hopefully putting them in a spot where they can improve and my grandkids can be in even a better space than they are.
I love that you said messing up in front of them and kind of apologizing, and setting it straight because we're not perfect and recognizing, oh, hey, you know what? I made a negative comment about someone's body, or I made a comment about someone's body that might make it seem like that's what matters the most. That's not what I intended, and that's not okay, and here's what I meant, and here's what I wanna teach you, right? So that they're learning kind of that differentiation. But again, it's so easy. It's so easy to just have those comments be automatic, and we really have to stop and think about it. What is the message I'm trying to send?
Absolutely.
Um, and again, not just for the next generation, but for ourselves
Yeah.
too. We deserve to also feel like we've got a great relationship, or at least a better relationship, um, with ourselves. And it really impacts everything from our healthcare professionals, how they treat their patients, how we treat each other, um, our ability to be empathetic, our ability to have compassion, all of that. Um, I also think kind of, really not the purpose of this whole episode, but if a lot of our members really embraced their bodies in more of a positive way and in a way of having strength, hopefully we can shift that feeling of shame that a lot of them may have, where they feel like, well, if I try to do something good, then I'm judged for that. And if I don't, then I'm judged for that as well. So how can we close that gap? I think is the way you're talking about it is a great place for us to start.
Yeah. I was just on a call with a member recently that um she was saying, I know what to do. Like, why am I struggling to do it? And that's so many of us, right? Is like, okay, we've got the information. How are we going to implement it? What are we going to do? And how are we going to do that in a way that doesn't spark shame and guilt in our lives? Meanwhile, those that are witnessing us make health changes and really prioritize, well being. And so, what does that look like? And I think what I mentioned before about our worth is if you don't think you're worth the changes, hard things are going to feel real hard. But if you can dial back and say, you know, picking up my grandkids is worth it. Like, being strong enough to go on a hike with my husband in my 70s, worth it. And all of these things to define it, and then realizing that those like, you're worthy of that, and you get to work from your worth versus for your worth. You get to think, "Man, this isn't gonna make me a quote unquote more worthy person. Like, this is because I am worthy of this, because my body um, is the vessel that carries my soul. Like, it's worth making these changes. And so when we get to promote what we love versus bashing what we hate, right? And we get to lean into these changes in a way better mindset and think, yeah, okay, so what helps you feel your best? I mean, that's one of my favorite questions to ask members is like, what does healthy look like? What helps you feel your best? And then if we remove the scale and we remove some of those objectives that can be so helpful, but can also be super detrimental if we're not in the mind space to handle that objective data, and lean into some subjective things over like, man, I woke up and my joints didn't hurt. I got out of bed and I opened the blinds and I didn't hear, the aches and moans that I normally do. Or what does it look like to feel hydrated and to feel like I have the energy for my day? So many people are understandably worried about adding Virta to their plate. They're worried about adding healthy steps to their plate. They're like, I am so busy. How am I going to do this? And I say, I'm not trying to add something to your plate. I'm trying to show you how to show up better for it. I'm trying to give you the energy for those things. And if you have little people in your home, you're showing them how to person, how to be a human in this super hard world, which is our job as parents. It's way more helpful to model this behavior for them than to give them a book on, hey, here's how to work hard. Like, hey, we're working hard in this house. You're going to be a witness to it, and then you're going to be a participant. And so that's where the inspiration comes is seeing these members almost have this like intrinsic change where they think, gosh, this is worth it. This is worth my time. This is attention. This is worth my attention. This is worth um, showing up to my life in a way that is so much mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally more healthy than where I would have been if I wouldn't have been willing to make these changes.
It's a really powerful way for us to help impact people's lives. I think just having health coaches in general, being able to help model that behavior and also help other people be able to find that within themselves. And what a beautiful way to be able to change yourself, not only to get healthier, but also to improve and recognize I'm doing this because I'm worth it and because of my worth rather than what you said, trying to become worthy only if I change XYZ about myself. But instead it's the other way around. So let's get on to kind of a different topic.
Mhm.
What are some areas that are influencing how we feel about our bodies and how we feel about other people's bodies? So, when we were kids, there wasn't the internet. We had magazines, there were commercials on TV, of course. And from what I recall, every single actor on a commercial was super duper skinny, beautiful long flowing hair, perfect skin, no cellulite, no wrinkles, none of that. Same thing in the magazines. It was exactly the same, right? And even in some of the earlier years, I think of, you know, Facebook and Instagram and whatever else is out there, um, in social media, I think it was still some of that. But talk to me about how you feel social media, today is really influencing that view on our bodies, how we view ourselves, how we view others, for better and maybe for worse.
Yeah. And I do think we see both. I think, growing up, you tapped on it. It was a very narrow definition of beauty that we were all trying to just match what beauty was in that person's life, never having the full story of what that person's life looked like, only having the physical representation at one time, of what beauty was, whether that was, magazines or the internet or TV or whatever. It was all about kind of this is beauty, aspire to it. And as adults, I think we kind of realized that we weren't that or felt less than. And then this was a generation that kind of took to social media. And at first, I think it just magnified it. I think, the Instagram filters and all the editing and all the, catch this part of your life, don't catch that part of your life editing. And I'm guilty of it. I contributed to it for the while. I was posting those too. I wanted to look good as well. I don't know if I even realized what was going on, but I was contributing to it. And then, in time, I think people have realized that that was discouraging so many people. And I worked in pediatrics previously and saw the impact of the harm that was going on and where they would talk about it coming from. And it changed my mind on social media for sure. I stopped posting as much and it was way more real. It was just far more authentic to give women what I had, in that I had beauty modeled for me in more than an edited photo, right? And that's what we want to constantly be giving younger generations, just this image that beauty is so much more than that, for women and for men. I think for men, this is the same story over, hey, take your kid to get that prom suit. And they say, oh, you'll fill it out, you'll bulk up and all these things. Like, skipping those comments and rather giving them definitions of what masculinity could look like, or what feeling comfortable in your skin and feeling at home in your body could look like. So I'm seeing a shift on social media. I'm seeing more people pose, real questions about how we're impacting others and then respond to it in a way that's more authentic. And I'm hopeful that that will create change. And that being said, that's not where I'm going for healing. Like, if I'm not in a really good spot with my body, social media is the last place that I want to try to, heal up. So something to note
Right.
for others as well. Yeah, it's not gonna be a place of healing.
Right. Definitely not a place of healing. That said, it being it's here. It's here. It's not
Yeah.
going anywhere. Um, and it is a way that people can stay connected.
Right.
We might argue about what that might look like in different circles, but it is a way that people stay connected. And so,
Yeah.
how can we really um, make those connections more positive, influence that in a positive way? I'm with you. I think we have seen a shift. There's still the problems with all the filters. There's the problems with, now I'm not seeing nearly as many photos of perfect looking models that are showing the clothing that maybe I might want to wear. But
Mhm.
I am seeing more than ever products to get rid of wrinkles, um, injections that I should be trying, fillers, all of this stuff. And I'm like, oh man. So it's not as much about the body now, at least not from what I'm seeing. And now it's all this, your skin needs to be perfect. How dare you uh age, and so there's more still there.
Um,
But when it comes to the body positivity piece, I mean, I think I first noticed this with the Dove
mm,
commercials where they wanted to start, they really kind of were bold and um, they highlighted women of all shapes,
mhm.
sizes, colors, all different types of hair. And I thought that was just, I think it made some people uncomfortable at first, but
Sure.
now really normalizing that and showing beauty is in every type of shape and size and color, and background. And I think that now we're seeing that a lot more, and even in commercials. I don't think I'm seeing, the vast majority of commercials that I'm seeing now are with actors that just look like real people,
True, yeah.
uh, everyday people, and I
Yeah.
think that's such a that's a really welcome change, at least for me, to see and for everyone to be able to see. So definitely some positive shifts there,
Mhm,
but there's
mhm.
always things that we need to be able to continue to do better, and there's always gonna be this, for a lot of, especially younger folks that wanna sort of show the narrative on Instagram that everything's great. My family is perfect, I don't have any, pores or any wrinkles, and really, why do we have to put that out there? Um, so with that, there's so many influences out there. When it comes to what we can control, it's how we talk to others, how we talk to, let's say, our kids in our own home. So how can we help them?
Mhm.
Not even the kids in our own home, but kids everywhere, our kids' friends, really
Yeah.
anyone. How can we help them, or how can we talk to them about their bodies in a way that builds confidence rather than shame?
Yeah, we say often in our house, like, more is caught than taught, right? Like, I wanna use all the words and, my sons and even my daughter are like, "Mom, we get it, like, less words, but we can model this for them." Like, thank goodness we can model this for them, and so, and the truth is they can get so much from those moments where you're coaching them through, "Hey, you saw this, you said this." I just wanna go back a bit and say, "Did you notice her smile too? Like, did you notice how strong she is carrying those grocery bags? Like, do you notice, you can help them notice things outside of the critical judgments, but you can also just promote more of like a neutral mentality over and saying like, she seems so kind. She just seems so kind. And different things like that. And kind of redirecting some of that like body on the chopping block comment kind of thing. And then also knowing like they're getting all of us. So, like, I have scars down my leg from pregnancy, and my kids notice them, and they will see me look at them every now and then, but where they used to see me stop and kinda stare at them and kinda have a little bit of a moment of like, "Okay." Now they just kinda see me glance and kinda move on because to me, like, would I trade my kids for those? No chance. As much as they see me look at those scars, they hopefully hear me say, "It is my biggest blessing to be your mom." Is my biggest blessing. And so where they see my frustration over when I get sick, this is kind of a pinpoint issue for me over like I get frustrated when I'm sick. Working through that with them and saying, I'm frustrated when I'm sick, but like I can be present for you when you're sick and show up in different ways and work through that with them. Or like they've seen me train for a triathlon and do their little bike routes with my running patterns and all of those kind of things. But they've also seen me have to sit down with an ice pack and nurse an injury, and so we're really showing them all different sides of body positivity and what their bodies can do without making it totally about their bodies, right? Like we're saying, hey, you kept showing up for that. That's amazing. Like, I loved how hard you worked at that. Just the different comments to kind of pull off performance based, worth based comments that I think just have them feel like, okay, if I'm able to do this, then I am this. And where this got me, and I apologize if I'm oversharing for most because I know that this is a sensitive subject, is I thought I was really confident in my body until I had a miscarriage, like just honestly. And then I had a long time of processing, like feeling like my body failed, and so where do you go there? Theoretically healthy, theoretically all of these things, but feeling like my body failed and having to go back to worth being intrinsic and what I believe is God given, and working out of those things over saying, like, sometimes my body is going to fail. I'm not always going to get first place. I'm not always going to be able to one rep max what I thought I could. I'm not able to walk through those moments always in the way that I hoped that I could, but I keep showing up and I want my kids to keep showing up for all of those moments and learn how to trust their body when, things are going well, but also trust their body that they're going to get through it when things are hard too.
It's such a great message. And being able to show that vulnerability in yourself, again, not just telling this story, but showing it, showing, maybe I'm injured right now and this is hard, but I'm taking care of myself to get through it. And you're going to fall down, you're going to get
Yeah.
hurt, and I'm going to help take care of you. And then you're going to learn how to nurture yourself too, and
Mhm.
recognize that this is just what happens and that that's okay. But to your point, they have to see us demonstrate it in ourselves and not just talk about it, because that's what's really gonna hit home.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now we're talking about, how we can talk to our kids or young people in general, each other. Let's get a little bit more granular about that. What language or habits, should parents avoid when it comes to body image and eating, and what can they do instead?
Yeah, great question. I think if there's, one change that we could emphasize is just simply the language that we use. Is it's intentional, that's one thing. A lot of it I think is mindless. I don't think any parent is trying to critique the body of, themselves or their kids, but some things we can do knowing that they're always observing. I think we need to avoid negative thought. Ugh. I think we need to avoid negative self-talk in front of them. I would love for it to be non-existent, but at least not in front of your kids. Things like, "I need to lose weight," things like, "I feel so bloated," things like, "I can't eat that, it's bad." Even things like cheat days, um, man, that's impactful. If it's even not directed at them, it becomes their framework for how they see food. They see food as, um, you know, being something that can make them feel icky, and we don't want them to see that. We want them to see food as fuel. So it's a different mindset. Second to that, I would say being mindful of labeling food as good or bad. This can create a lot of shame. I know we talked about that a little bit on the flight over like shame about what you eat leads to shame about yourself. End of story. And so if we have shame around what we're eating it, why we're eating, the portion that we're eating, and that's not going to help our kids if we're talking about it. We could use words like, "Hey, this I think will give you the energy that you need for that soccer match." Or, "Hey, I noticed you're growing so strong, and I think it might be because you're fueling your body with foods like this." So giving them just those active, again, promote what we love versus bashing what we hate, right? Giving them those active examples of like, "Hey, this instead," but in a way that's really encouraging. And then we've hit on this a lot, and I hope that this is something that could be, iterated into a lot of people's vocabularies is just if you feel like you need to comment on someone else's body, stop. Like, there's just not a place for it. Culturally, we have made this far too okay. It's not up for public discussion in someone's body. If our kids are curious in their little developmental minds of wanting to process that with you, get on the ground to their level and explain, something positive about the body that they just critiqued, or move on, or talk about it in a place that's appropriate. But um, going about our days critiquing people's bodies is really going to impact the way that our kids view others, and we want to be mindful of that.
I think that's actually a great first step. If you have no idea where to start, because this is a lot of information and takes a lot
Yeah,
of
sure.
practice. If you don't know where to start, a great place to start is
Um,
just to not comment about people's bodies, right? Just take it
just
out
stop.
of just stop. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's one of the best things you can do, and just stop, There's a lot of techniques that we can talk about. There's a lot of scripts that we can provide, but it can be pretty overwhelming and takes a lot of practice, but the one thing that doesn't take a whole lot of practice is when we recognize that we're doing it and we just stop. We just stop.
And if you need to journal it out, if you're having a hard time with that, there's other steps that you can do. But you're right. I mean, if we focus on what we can do, most of us can just stop. And then, yeah, look for opportunities to celebrate strength and movement, and, talk about exercise as a way to be able to have the energy to do what we need to do throughout the day. Teach them that, hey, I can do this because I did that, right? Or like, do you want to go on a run with me? Like, I just need some fresh air. And really, that's a way to feel alive and connect with our bodies and care for ourselves. Before we can care for others in a way that's productive, we have to be able to have our needs met too. And that's exercise, eating well. Those are ways that we can show up for ourselves to show up for others.
Yeah. So for some of our listeners who might
Yeah.
be ready to move past to the next step beyond just, okay, I'm just not going to comment on other people's bodies or my own. Where can they kind of go next from there? What else can we do?
And I'm curious if people, our members, men, women alike, really took just a hot second and thought, am I doing this? Like without judgment, just noticing where they're at, or maybe even taking a tally of how many times a critique of a physical body, their own or the bodies of others, comes through their mind, and kind of realize what's coming up for them. This is stuff that I thought I was okay until things like the miscarriage or until things like parenting through some of these things over like you think you're okay with it, right? And then having to walk through these lines, but just being aware. And we say we can't change what we don't acknowledge. So then, talk to ourselves about the story that we're telling ourselves. Like, what's the narrative in your mind? Is your body bad and so you want to make it good? Or is your body good and you want to be healthy going forward? And trying to change the way that we really verbalize our own language about our bodies. It overflows onto others, but making that conscious shift. I hate the way I look in this versus this body helped me show up today. And this body works hard hours. This body meal prepped. This body did this body did that. And working through like, man, I might be a little stronger than I'm giving myself credit for.
So maybe there are a few practical scripts that we might be able to give our listeners. One example might be you're in the grocery store with your curious little child that lacks a little bit of a filter. Um, they see someone picking out food at the grocery store, naturally, and they comment on that person's body. Maybe that person is very,
Mm,
very thin, and they say, wow, they look really skinny, mom, or really skinny, dad.
mm,
They're way skinnier than that other lady who has a big belly. Is there anything we can say to
mm.
to try to redirect those comments into a more positive or neutral um, type of conversation?
Yeah, neutral is always my goal. If we can't get them there, to noticing something else, sometimes even redirecting the behavior depending on the age, trying to steer them to a behavior that we want to promote more of versus one that we want to like feed into. And that would be my first line. Second to that, just be like, oh, I noticed her smile. Or I noticed how good those apples in her cart look, or I noticed how she's probably gonna make a great salad later, or things of that nature that are just more objective and less body focused. Um, you know, really staying regulated as a parent because something comes up in us, right? Like we heighten and we become like, oh, did they hear that? Did they hear that? Oh, my child, you're talking so loud, and all of those things, but really getting down on their level and walking them through the moment if you need to, redirecting when you're able. Sometimes just getting in the car and having the conversation over, saying, hey, when we're at the store, our focus is on fueling our bodies with food that goes in our carts. So we're not going to make comments on other bodies or what other foods are going into other people's carts because that's not why we're here today. And then moving on. And just reminding them and reminding them and reminding them. I think the hardest part of parenting is it's so dang daily. Like we have to show up to it all the time. And it's the biggest, hugest gift in my life. And it is the hardest work I've ever done because you never clock out. I was a parent the moment that Turner entered the world and years later, and hopefully always will be his mom. And it's the best thing in the world to be his mom, Tatum's mom, and Kit's mom. But it's also so hard to show up for this. So as consistently as I can, make it a pattern, make it a phrase you say. We say in our home, like, Carlsons are kind. And so I can revert back to that when I'm feeling exhausted from parenting, exhausted from work, exhausted. I don't really want to focus on body positivity right now. I just want that comment to stop. But rather coming back and saying, hey, Carlsons are kind and that comment was unkind. Can we talk about it more in the car? Those are a few ways that we could address comments like that. But first, just don't be mad at your kids for making comments that are coming through your head too. You know, meet them on their level. They're willing to hear you out. They're willing to talk with you. Kids are so gracious. My kids have been so kind to me every time I've apologized and wanted to make it right.
I'm really excited about trying this strategy in the grocery store. Uh, the strategy of redirecting, because I think what one thing I've tried to do is I've tried to over explain. I've tried to explain so much why. Let's talk about bodies in a way that shows strength. Let's talk about this person in a way that shows kindness. Let's not even talk about their body. Let's talk about this instead. And maybe I'm over explaining it and maybe I'm putting too much, I'm almost concentrating it. Instead, I love what you said. Oh man, they're picking out some, let's just say they're picking out some canned tomatoes, or hey, they're grabbing a box of mac and cheese. That's your favorite. Or what else do you think they can put in that? Or I wonder what they're going to make for dinner tonight. I wonder what their favorite food is. And I just think that's that could be such an easy strategy rather than trying to train ourselves to try to mold exactly how they think about this. We can train ourselves to look at this person in a different way, in a more observational way, in a more objective way, as you've said. So thank you for that great tip. I'm going to try that the next time we're at the grocery store together because yes, mine is quite curious and loves to make comments about just about everything. So as we're starting to close out this episode, I feel like we could just talk for the next, 6, 12 hours about all of that, but none of us have exactly that much time to listen to the whole thing. Um, what is one small step that someone can take today to feel more at peace in their own body?
I think allow for a moment of awareness over what your body has done to get you here. And then, as much as you can, just remove any type of scoring system that you've used to attach worth from what your physical body does or doesn't do, or how it looks or doesn't look, how you're shaped, how you're not shaped, how you feel, how you don't feel, but just with compassion, look at what you've done and how you continue to do it and your body continues to show up for it. And then, really practice compassion towards your body, towards other bodies. It's not a problem to be solved. It's not something to be graded. It's a body that's gotten you to the point that you're at. I want to start over. I got to think about this. Um okay. So, if I had one thing that I wanted members, listeners to focus on today is just seeing their bodies with compassion, taking away any scoring system they've used to assess how they look, how they don't look, how they feel, how they don't feel, and rather just take a minute to appreciate the point that your body has gotten you to, and then decide what steps feel best for you as an individual. Like maybe we can go back to just stopping if you feel like you need to comment on your body on someone else's body. Maybe you're feeling really tired and this next week you need to figure out how to get more rest into your routine. Maybe it's something you start, maybe it's something that you stop. And you do it for your body, yes, but you ultimately do it to mobilize your soul. And that's the goal of bodies, is to get us moving around so that we can do what we were put here to do. And your body was made on purpose for purpose. It's a good thing to have a body that can carry out our purpose. And I truly believe like everyone's capable and worthy of living into that. And so to me, that's what body positivity is. And feeling at home in your body today is the top priority for me.
Well, that is a really beautiful place for us to wrap things up for today. So Esther, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. There is so much more that we can get into, and I hope to have you back very soon so that we can dive in even more into these topics.
I'm so glad for the chance. Thank you, Teresa. So glad to work in Mother with you.
So glad to work in Mother with you too, Esther. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. And if you'd like to regain control of your metabolic health and feel like yourself again, check us out at Virta.com. That's VIRTA.com. Your Life Reset is for informational purposes only and shouldn't be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Contact your provider if you suspect you have a medical problem. I'll chat with you all again soon. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.